Hey everybody.
Hi, Bob.
Just gonna slap together this LS motor that we've done. It's like a 5.3 or something. It's a generation 3. I don't know if that would make it a millennial or Gen X. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Red Dirt Rods. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Today we are finally wrapping up our LM7 5.3 Gen 3 LS build. We started this build a long time ago and then it just got pushed into a corner. We were still waiting on a couple of parts to show up. Well, we have everything finally. We're ready to put this bad boy together and we're going to show you guys how to do it for your project. Okay, so first things first, we got all these cool parts. The engine, we rebuilt this. It is a small block 5.3 liter LM7. It's about a 2003, 2004 model. Had about 150,000 miles on it, I believe. We went through this and rebuilt it with a Summit Racing LS rebuild kit. So it's got new hyper-eutectic pistons, new bearings. We reused the rods and crank, and we've got a turbo spec cam in this thing. I'm going to take our lifters, we'll put them in this container here. And this is a bottle of break-in oil that I keep on hand just for stuff like this. It's almost empty. I'm still going to put assembly lube on the camshaft, on the roller, but I like to soak the lifters in oil first. So first thing first, I'm going to take some of my assembly lube and I'm just going to, actually I'm going to do it up here. I'm just going to yeet some of this onto the cam. Get some in the lifter bores. I'm going to put a bit inside each cup. These are the factory cups that came out of this particular engine. Okay, they're all lubed up. Now I'm just going to drop them into place. Maybe. Then I will drop these into the lifter bores here. Okay. Even though we're good, I'm going to put some here. I gotta find the bolts to secure the lifter trays real quick. This is the problem when you build an engine and you take a year to finish it. You forget where everything is. So let me go find those bolts. I'll be right back. All right, we got the bolts. I'm gonna zip these in here. Okay, and I'm gonna hit the inside of each one of these with a little bit of assembly lube. All right, now for head gaskets, we are using these Mr. Gasket MLS gaskets that we got in a master kit from Mr. Gasket. I'm just gonna drop that on right there. Then take our 862 heads, line it up, lower it in place. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and roll this over a little bit. We've got our Earl's head bolts. I like to clean them in the box. Just gonna spray them down. All right, let's pull these bad boys out. So not only do you want to clean the bolts, but you also want to clean the washers. There are 2 different size washers. So we'll clean those separately. All right, so quick note on these washers. There is a flat side and there is a chamfered side. The chamfer, which is basically just a little roll, is on the inside of the hole. That has to be to the bolt head. That gives adequate clearance for the bolt to clamp properly. If you do this wrong, you can have loose head bolts. All right, so we got a couple of speed wrenches here, one with a 10 millimeter and the other with a 13 millimeter for our head bolts. The bolts come with some anti-seize. This has to be used on both the threads. So we're gonna put this on the threads. You don't need a ton. There we go, get a little bit on the threads. And you also wanna put a little on both sides of the washer, so that you don't have issues with it grabbing. Okay, there are 3 different sizes of head bolt for the LS, the early LS. So the long ones go all across here and through the center. The 2 outer bolts that are large, they're the large size, but they're short. They go on the outside positions inside the cover, and then the small ones go across the front. So we're going to prep all these, throw them in. We've got all of our bolts lubed up, so we're just going to drop them in real quick. Small ones to the outside. Okay, hold on. I'm going to take my rail off. I forgot the rail has to come out. Okay, drop the rest of these in. And we drop the small ones in here. We should use our speed wrench. We're just going to snug each one of these down. Now we go to the small ones. Again, we're not torquing them, we're just snugging them down, and we're checking the fit of the bolts to make sure that nothing needs chased or anything like that. All right, so now we need to torque the bolts. Now I have some notes here on placement. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll this motor over. Torquing the heads is done in 3 stages. The first is 30 foot-pounds, then 50 foot-pounds, then 75 foot-pounds. You start in the center. This is bolt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then it goes 11, 12, 13, 14, and finally 15. I'm using my gear wrench digital torque wrench set to 30 foot-pounds. All right, now we've got our 13. The stock bolts are 15 millimeter, but the aftermarket Earl's ones have a 13 millimeter head. We're going to start here with 30 foot-pounds. So we've gotten the first pass. We're going to do the second and third pass on the large 11 millimeter bolts. The 8 millimeter bolts, which are at the top, we will do last, and those we take to 22 foot-pounds. So we're going to go ahead and jump up to 50 foot-pounds and do this again. Now, the final pass of 70 foot-pounds, 75 foot-pounds. Now we switch to our 10 millimeter. We'll do the top ones at 22 foot-pounds. There we go. Now we can take our push rods and soak these in the same oil. Get them good and lubed up. I'm going to put some assembly lube on the tips, both sides. Then our rockers, I'm going to put a little assembly lube on the top of the valves. I'm going to do this, get these started with a hand wrench just to make sure I don't cross thread anything. Now we just got to do the other side, then we'll finish wrapping up the long block. We're going to go ahead and torque down our rocker arms. I've got the engine at top dead center on the number 1 on the compression stroke, and the number 1 should be loose like it is. So we're going to do in a specific sequence, which I have written down here because I can't remember everything. So in top dead center on the compression stroke, we're going to torque to 22 foot-pounds. The exhaust for 1, 2, 7, and 8. The intake for 1, 3, 4, and 5. Then we will rotate this 360 degrees and we will do we'll do exhaust for 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then intake 2, 6, 7, and 8, and that should get everything locked down. So let's go ahead and knock this out. All right. Everything spins. We don't have any interference. Nothing is touching. We should be good to go. Now, we're going to throw this valley plate on. We're going to use our cool new billet aluminum valley plate and this gasket from Mr. Gasket. Our new Mr. Gasket gasket. Then our new Holley blank valley cover plate. Drop that on. We've got some stainless steel valley cover bolts that we got from Mr. Gasket. And these just drop in and thread in. Our new Mr. Gasket stainless steel hardware. This is slow. We're just going to work from center out, snug them up, crisscross pattern. So now we're going to do our steam lines. Now our original plan was to use the Earl's stainless steel hardline steam lines, but turns out I am missing a couple of adapters. I don't know if I lost them. I probably did. So we have another set. We're going to use a little bit different set. Originally, these 862s had the rear steam lines blocked off. I was going to use them. We went ahead and put the block-offs back in place. And we're going to use these really cool pieces from Earl's. So these are adjustable. They're made with billet aluminum, and they have an O-ring seal built in. They just kind of lock together, kind of like Legos. Or somewhere, here we go. Gotta have the right piece. So then these go right here in the steam port. We're just gonna lightly install it, and then this one is a single, so it just has one outlet. This one is really cool. This is what makes the whole thing work really well. This is a pass-through. So the steam line from this comes in here to join the two sides, and then your output is right here. So we're just gonna make sure you have to make sure the O-ring is down to the head. This particular kit comes with this hose pre-made, so you can put this guy in here however you want. It's all AN fitting. These are -4. The ones I was going to use, the hard lines, are -3. They make them in 3 and 4. I have a number 3 hardline set, and I have 2 of these in number 3, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so then you can use just a regular fitting, or it comes with a length of pre-assembled hose. So once we get to the end point, we will thread that on there, and this will go into our radiator, or in this case, it's going to go on the back of the mid mount, which is really cool because it hides it all. Now we're going to put together this intake. So set this over here. This uses little 12 point. These are a number 6 or 6 millimeter 12 point. My only 12 point is on this nut driver, so it's going to be a little bit of a goofy look. Putting this together is a bit of a faff. You have to put together your own O-rings, because they're not actually rings. It's basically cord. So it's going to take a minute to do this part of it. All right, so the intake base comes with some pre-made gaskets, these little O-rings. What you want to do is wipe a little bit of silicone brake lube in the holes all the way around. You can use light engine oil if you don't have silicone brake lube, but the lube is what is suggested by Holley. Alright, so I'm going to finish this off by wiping that with my finger. Then I'll take each O-ring and just kind of press it into the groove. Like that. You want to make sure that it goes in clean and stays and doesn't pop out. Just like that. So you don't want to stretch it because they're just the right size. Stretching it will make it more difficult. I like to do the top and the bottom, and then kind of use the sides to take up any excess material. Start on the bottom, make the corner transition, and then come back up to the top. Yeah, that works pretty good. Now I can take this and set it on the engine. So this cool little intake uses studs instead of bolts. That ensures that it lines up. So we're just going to run these studs in here real quick. Now we can drop the intake onto the engine. Being careful. Each stud gets a washer. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. This is the cord for the intake adapter. So what I'm going to do, you have to pre-install a couple of these things and mess about with it. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. So let me show you what I'm doing here. Just lightly pushing this cord into the groove. And I want a little bit of overlap. There's a little wide mark right here. That's our connecting point. And bring this one around over here. Okay, so now we have the two pieces where they overlap. You got to make sure that everything fits and you don't have excess and you're not stretching it. So let me pull this back a little bit. So now here at this little mark, okay, we've got everything fitting. I take my razor blade and I'm going to cut across both pieces of cord. Don't screw this up, you only have one cord. Okay, now I can take that cord and let's see, I'm going to finish. So I got my main cuts. So I know exactly where it's supposed to be, and I got to find the other cut. It's real easy to screw this up, and my cut on the first piece kind of disappeared on me. So now we've got it trimmed. This is where it gets weird, okay? You have to super glue these together. So I've got some medium viscosity CA glue, which is super glue, cyanoacrylate. And then I have some accelerator. Whoa, don't tie it in a knot. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to take a dab, just a tiny little dab on the end, and I'm going to spray this end with the accelerator, and then just touch the two ends together nice and clean like that. Because I'm using the accelerator, this will stick almost instantly. Okay, now I'm going to let this sit for a minute. Okay, so if you have a little drip like I've got here, just I can clean it up carefully with a razor blade. Actually, I'm going to sit it on the table. All right, that should work. Okay, so now we've got that nice and clean. Now, the other thing that you're supposed to do to make sure that you have a good seal, let's see, where's it at? Let me double check it. Once you have the super glue, you're supposed to take a bit of silicone and just wipe it around that joint just to make sure that it seals well. All right, back on the engine. We've got our silicone or our rubber ring, and we're going to hang a little bit of it out the end like this. We're just going to push this in. It doesn't say to do this in the instructions, but I have done these before, and I like to put a dab of silicone in a couple of key points, specifically on the edges of the corners, just to kind of help hold everything in place while we're doing this. Okay, so I can stick that in there. That should help it. Then the top plate goes on. There we go. Threads call for a bit of, just a dab of oil on each thread. Ugh. Not everywhere. Okay. Okay, just a little light. The placement doesn't super matter. I'm just going to use this to make sure my ends are flush. This thing does move around a little bit when you torque it. Now we just take a razor blade and carefully cut across. Now you take this, a little more oil. This goes in without the gasket for now. So this is the setup stage. Okay, so now that's on there. So the reason we installed this ahead of time was to make sure that everything is aligned. And what you're supposed to do is come back through here, loosen all these, And then you come in here and you give these a little bump, okay, to make sure that everything's aligned. We already did that with our straight edge, so I feel pretty confident about it. So I'm going to go ahead and bump these down. Now we can take this off. Okay. Whoa. Okay. So now we've got our O-ring. The silicone is starting to cure up. That's what you want. We're going to put that right in that center little hole. We'll start there first, and then work this around. If you have trouble getting the O-ring to fit in the groove, you can stretch it, and that'll make it a little bit thinner. But you just have to release tension as you go so that you don't end up stretching the O-ring and having a bunch of extra O-ring that you got to deal with. You got to give this a little bit of the salt and pepper. Push it real good. Did that land? I don't know if it did. Okay.
Right.
Now that's done. So Holley also suggests a dab of silicone right here at these two places to ensure that there's a good seal. And then we're just going to do crisscross. I'm going to start on the bottom. And then we can go ahead and just make sure, give it a couple extra ugga-duggas. And we're going to go ahead and bump these down a little bit. I just don't have a torque wrench that goes to, 106 inch-pounds. It's a little weird. I just don't have that. Most people don't, so I'm using this. Okay, now we've got our intake bolted in. Time to install the fuel injectors and fuel rails. This comes with two sets of brackets for the fuel rails. The shorts are for the short style injectors. The long ones are for the Bosch style injectors, which is what we have. So we will install these bad boys like this. So these bad boys go right here. We're going to put the threaded side here. All right, so these are held in with number 8 12 points. So just going to thread that in there. We can tighten these down with a ratcheting wrench once the fuel rails are installed. Now, the injectors. Silicone paste. You can use a little bit of light oil or mineral oil, but silicone paste is what's recommended, and just a little bit on the O-ring. You can drop that bad boy right in there. We got that one ready already. Like Einhorn says, laces out. That's an Ace Ventura joke for you if you didn't know, or if you're too young to know what Ace Ventura is. And we take our fuel rail, so we drop the fuel rail in. This is why we don't tighten those brackets yet. You have to adjust them. Okay. Get the injectors lined up with the holes. Take this bolt, run it through, give this a quick zip. Now our fuel rails are installed. We'll plumb this up later in the car. This is our 102 millimeter Sniper throttle body. We've got this gasket. Just gonna drop that in. Now this didn't come with any bolts, and all I have right now are some just standard metric bolts, little red ones. That doesn't match anything else on this engine, so I will be replacing these, but for now, I'm gonna throw these on here. This throttle body is gorgeous. Last step for the intake is installing this throttle cable bracket. Alright, we got a lock washer, a flat washer, and then the bracket. So one of these lock washers doesn't want to go on that way. Oh, which way that goes? You can flip this thing upside down, and it's slotted so that you can adjust the position to work best with your cable and bracketry. So we're just going to pre-install it up, in this position. All that gets adjusted once we're in the car. Last but not least, you definitely don't want to forget these. And those are the vacuum port plugs. So I don't know what all we're going to need on our Cadillac install. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop that on the floor. There's that one. There's that one. Okay, so there are 3 ports on the back of the intake. Those 2 are vacuum ports. This one is for an LS3 style map sensor. I don't have the map sensor on hand yet, so we're just going to leave that one open. But we're going to bump these in here to make sure that we don't have any problems. Last step is the valve covers. We've got a set of brand new valve cover gaskets from Mr. Gasket. There is a skinny side and a fat side. Fat side goes towards the heads. So they are molded, so they only go in one way. You can put a dab of silicone in here to keep them from coming out as well. Okay, just like that. Drop them on. Got the little boots. Get 2. All right, guys, we've wrapped up our Gen 3 LS LM7 5.3 build. We used a bunch of really cool parts from Holley and Summit Racing. I'm really excited to get this thing into our 66 Caddy, strap some turbos on it, and see what this thing will do. Next time, we're going to bolt on the front accessory drive with that Holley mid-mount. We're going to show you guys how to do it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Let's make magic.